Hello, my name is Tyler, and welcome to the StreamGuys webinar. We want to thank you for joining us today for our review of how to make the most of your unsold digital inventory. Today we will be covering the digital ad serving hierarchy, optimizing your digital campaigns, and the impacts to your existing advertisers and producers. We will be doing a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please submit any of your questions and we will be sure to review them. We wanted to kick things off with a quick review of the challenges facing publishers today and some frequently asked questions regarding digital monetization. The challenge StreamGuys sees with many commercial and community broadcasters is your content is consistently producing more ad inventory than your sales team can fulfill. For those of you running impression-based campaigns, this can easily be seen. If you are noticing that 30% or more of your impressions are going unfulfilled, it may be time to evaluate additional ad partnerships. For those of you not running impression-based sales, the best step is to evaluate if your current model makes more sense than running impression-based sales. The issue is pretty straightforward. Unfulfilled slots aren't yielding you any revenue. Large amount of unfilled impressions can actually be a sign that you are paying more than you earn. It often costs money for you to host the listeners, but you're not making anything in return. Your requirements can range. Your team needs an advertising partner or a group that fits your organization's culture. People often ask, how many listeners do I need to start running ad insertion? Or, we are pretty selective about what type of advertiser that we will promote. The good news is there's likely a network for you. The wide world of digital advertising continues to grow larger each year. In the past, options were limited to big programmatic groups who didn't have the flexibility to limit advertisers by category. But in recent years, that has all changed. We have seen publishers with 40 listeners turn a profit, and advertising marketplaces sprout up for even the most selective media groups. At the end of the day, most organizations want the same thing, to earn more money from the solution than they pay. The great part of digital advertising is that you can work with multiple organizations at the same time. So if your team falls short one month or a network underperforms, you still have others to pick up the slack. So when is the right time to evaluate monetization? Well, like I mentioned earlier, it depends. Some small groups can find success with the sponsorship model, and some groups may prefer to only run host reads and not dynamically insert. That being said, here are some very general benchmarks for when you should start to seriously evaluate your digital strategy. For programmatic sales, we find that publishers with 500 plus concurrent listeners see the most success. You are certainly able to earn revenue with less listeners, but at the 500 benchmark, we see meaningful revenue in the thousands monthly. For podcasters, a good benchmark is 50,000 downloads. That being said, for niche content and a good sales partner, you can likely earn strong revenue with much less audience. The next step is where you should start. You should always start by consulting your hosting provider to see who they are already integrated with. A good hosting provider like StreamGuys will have multiple options for ad insertion. What if you need a lower stakes service to start out? Well, there are plenty of free options to dip your toes. If you are a streaming publisher, I would recommend trying out a separate digital-only feed. That feed can play the same content as your standard stream, but run digital-only underwriters. For podcasters, host reads are always an option for starting out. Like most things in life, monetization technology is a you get what you pay for solution. So free options might get you a good way to start out, but they're likely not going to be the best option for long term. The most common questions we hear is, how much do stations earn with digital streams? Should we be earning more? Our response is, you should be earning more than you pay each month. Regardless if you're a small local group or a large media organization, you should always be out earning your digital media costs. Next, we want to review the waterfall method in regards to server-side ad insertion. The waterfall method is referencing the priority in which your sales channels take place. We always want to arrange the waterfall so that the top earning sales channels are at the top and the lowest value sales channels run last. The most common waterfall is direct sales, then second seat, programmatic sales, and unsold sales. I'm sure that most of you are aware of what these sales channels are, but to quickly run through them, direct sales are any one-on-one deal between your organization and the advertiser. These are typically your top earning campaigns because there's no splits on the revenue. Next up would be second seat. They can be thought of as a three-party sale. The ad agency would work on behalf of the publisher to find the advertisers. This method will likely net you less than direct sales, but more than your programmatic sales channels. Next would be your programmatic. It uses automated technology to matchmake advertisers and publishers. This likely won't be your top CPM earner, but we often find that it drives the most revenue because there's the most volume. The final step is unsold. This category is your last line to actually fulfill an opportunity. These spots typically don't drive much revenue, but there's still certainly value in promotion. The next up, we will be reviewing sales channels and optimizing your sales channels for performance. Like we mentioned before, your waterfall and attention should always start with your direct sales. There are different sponsorship types such as impression-based sales, run-of-network, spot-based, and many more. What is correct for you will likely depend mostly on your audience size, your content type, and your team's availability to sell. We often find that the most successful strategy for publishers is impression or CPM-based sales. This sales method is most effective for comparing advertisers, monitoring performance, and booking campaigns. Impression-based sales also best lends themselves to a waterfall-style approach. The key component of having direct sales first is your team gets the first shot at premium inventory. If you are using dynamic ad insertion, this is a great time to utilize the tech for premium CPMs. Provide your advertisers with the markets of their choice, or even boil down the demographics of their choosing for a higher CPM. The other great part about dynamic ad insertion is the ability to track performance for your advertisers. Many, if not all, advertisers are willing to pay more for the performance tracking. The final important note is forecasting for the future. It's important to sell your inventory, and it's very difficult to do so if you don't know how much inventory you have. The best way to measure performance is to evaluate your annual trends. What did you sell last July? How much of your audience are you already selling? A strong ad tech service might actually do this for you. While direct sales are typically the top CPM placements, our next networks are often the top earners overall. Like we mentioned before, your waterfall and attention should always start with your direct sales. There are different sponsorship types such as impression-based sales, run-of-network, spot-based, and many more. What is correct for you will likely depend mostly on your audience size, your content type, and your team's availability to sell. We often find that the most successful strategy for publishers is impression or CPM-based sales. This sales method is most effective for comparing advertisers, monitoring performance, and booking campaigns. Impression-based sales also best lends themselves to a waterfall-style approach. The key component of having direct sales first is your team gets the first shot at premium inventory. If you are using dynamic ad insertion, this is a great time to utilize the tech for premium CPMs. Provide your advertisers with the markets of their choice, or even boil down the demographics of their choosing for a higher CPM. The other great part about dynamic ad insertion is the ability to track performance for your advertisers. Many, if not all, advertisers are willing to pay more for the performance tracking. The final important note is forecasting for the future. It's important to sell your inventory, and it's very difficult to do so if you don't know how much inventory you have. The best way to measure performance is to evaluate your annual trends. What did you sell last July? How much of your audience are you already selling? A strong ad tech service might actually do this for you. While direct sales are typically the top CPM placements, our next networks are often the top earners overall. First, I want to start this slide by saying unsold inventory does not mean no value. This point is incredibly important when planning and scheduling unsold campaigns. You should always start your creative process with a question: how does this benefit us? The next step in the process is to figure out how to keep the campaign feeling fresh. If you are promoting your other content, don't use the same read each time. Have different voices for the creatives in different scripts. Use the technology to rotate the creatives so it gives the listener a unique feel each time. Unsold impressions are a great way to drive your direct sales. Use your unsold campaigns to promote surveys on your website that let you learn more about your audience. Are any of your listeners planning on buying a barbecue in the next 6 months? I'm sure your local hardware store would be very interested. Unsold inventory is also a great way to promote other revenue driving activities. If you have merchandise, ticket sales, this would be a great place to connect with your audience and make a meaningful impact. Now that we've reviewed the general side of how your ad stack should line up, we'd like to review the actual ad technology powering it. There are 3 common methods of placing sponsorships: client side, server side, and baked in advertising. Server side ad insertion is the most popular method because it allows you to monetize wherever your content is found. Client side limits monetization to the pages you are in control of, and baked in eliminates all the flexibility when it comes to campaign management. The right option for you is dependent on what your advertisers want. If you have multiple advertisers competing for placements, baked in is probably not right for you. One of the most important questions you will need to ask your ad partners is, what tracking do you need? Some technology allows for per impression tracking, tracking pixels, and even more. Another deciding factor is what level of campaign management is necessary. Some advertisers may need to edit their own campaigns, target specific groups, or even buy specific impression amounts. We wanted to wrap things up with a review of the final step in the workflow: figuring out what ad partner is right for you. There are many factors that will determine a perfect partner, but for the sake of this webinar, we've broken the list down to 5. The first being, do they want exclusivity or not? Exclusivity is the ad network's right to sell all the inventory that you generate. You can often see partnerships like this in the podcasting space. Exclusivity contracts can work great for content creators that don't have their own sales team or don't have the bandwidth to manage multiple ad relationships. That being said, we find that most publishers benefit most from a diverse approach with non-exclusive agreements. The next question to ask yourself is, what are your revenue goals? Are you looking to fill 100% of your inventory each month with hundreds of campaigns? Or are you looking to work with a small number of advertisers but maximize their performance? There are partners for both options, but it is important to know what you want before you start searching for those networks. Another question is, how much effort can your team spend on managing these campaigns? And are they a fit for your brand? Creatives vary in range of labor-intensive host reads all the way to simple plug-and-play programmatic. The correct solution for most publishers is a mix. The last question you should ask any network partner is, what are your CPMs and splits? Not all networks partners are the same. The less involved your team is in the process, the less you should expect to earn. Revenue shares can range anywhere from 10% to way over 50%, but it is important to evaluate the amount of time your team has to manage these projects before you negotiate any type of split. I want to thank you again for joining us on the webinar reviewing how to make the most of your unsold digital inventory. We hope you gained some knowledge or new perspectives on digital monetization. StreamGuys works with hundreds of networks to optimize their monetization and delivery. And each group is unique. If you are interested in learning how we can help your station or group in particular, please reach out to us after the webinar and we can do a one-on-one review. I'll now be shifting things over to the Q&A section, so please send in any questions you may have and we'll be sure to review them. Thanks.